In terms of history, we are just a drop in the ocean. But there has never been a better time than right now for you to educate your children at home. Hi, I'm Christine. Welcome to the channel. I've got Smokey with me here today, so he's going to be annoying us during this video. He is cute, but no doubt he'll distract me. Okay, so the subject today I'm going to be talking about is time wasting, or the wasting of time. Now, it could be argued that time is our most valuable asset. You hear phrases like dead time and killing time and waste of time, and all these things are very, very negative. And we know that if once time has passed, there's no going back. You can't get that time back. People say that. Sorry, I'm just going to take him off here so that you don't get a close-up of his bum. That's a great worry. Yeah, if time has passed, we can't get it back. That is gone forever. And so wasting time is a bit of a disaster. So I'm going to take you through 6 ways that time is wasted in school. Now, to be fair, most of them, or about half of them, are just primary school related, and the other half are for primary and secondary schools. So the first one I've got is called transition. Now, transition is something that happens in school, and it's a very important part of teacher training. It is when the class moves from one thing to another. It transitions from one thing to another. So that could be coming in first thing in the morning. There's the transition from outside to sitting at desks. Or another transition might be if the class... that door opening is Pumpkin coming in. Another transition might be if the class is going to a different classroom. Obviously that happens a lot. This is Pumpkin now. Obviously you've met Pumpkin before. In secondary school, there are transitions from class to class all the time. In primary school, it doesn't happen so much, but it does happen. And there's a lot of time wasted there, not just in terms of actually moving from one room to another, but also the clearing up, the packing up that has to be done in the classroom. The children have to put everything in their bags. They have to put their coats on if they're in secondary school, or they might need to take something with them. And that takes time. And then there's the walk along the corridor, and depending on how big the school is, depending on how well or badly behaved the class is, depending on what else is going on in the school, that can take quite a while, up to even 10 minutes wasted of the day. And in a secondary school, that's 10 minutes between each lesson. So that is a lot of wasted time. The second way that time is wasted is when in the lesson you're waiting for somebody who's slow before you can move on to the next thing. And just because somebody is a slow worker doesn't mean that they're not bright or that they can't keep up intellectually. It just means that when they write slowly. When they complete a task, they complete the task slowly. And depending on how important the task is, depending on sorry, so distracted by these cats. Depending on what other tasks need to be done, this can hold up the whole class. And yes, that isn't to say that the class is doing, the children who have completed their tasks are doing nothing. They're not sitting waiting. They'll have another task to complete, but that second task will be an unnecessary extra. It's a holding task. It's just there for the sole purpose of preventing this slow child from falling behind the rest of the class. And so that is a waste of time, in that it's holding your child back when they could be getting on with the next task. Okay, another waste of time, and this is on a different level, it's when the subject that's being taught is a waste of time. I've mentioned before that there are some subjects that your children will get taught in school that they won't be interested in, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We can't all be interested in everything. So if a subject is being taught that your child is not interested in, that is going to have no impact on their future, it's a waste of time. It's an actual waste of time. And sometimes that might be 3 or 4 hours a week that's spent on that, depending what the subject is in secondary school, or perhaps in primary school it's not so much, maybe just an hour a week. But in primary school I think there are liable to be more subjects that are what you might call filler subjects than in a secondary school. So they're just things, it's not maths, it's not literacy, it's just something else that we have to do in school. Okay, then there's stuff that's timetabled, that's non-teaching time. So for example, that might be something like assembly. Now, there are arguments for and against assembly, but in 21st century Britain, assemblies are just bringing the school together, or a portion of the school together, and maybe get some pontificating from the head teacher. There's really little value to it. There's a bit of singing, and sometimes, yes, there is value in corporate singing. There's no doubt about that. But ultimately, a lot of things like assembly are basically a waste of time. Okay. Then we've got interruptions. There are interruptions that happen during the day that are a waste of time. So that might be, for example, I'm not going to speculate what that might be in a secondary school, but in a primary school that might be something like one of the other classes is doing some fundraising, and so you need to take your class, or your child's class needs to go to the event in another classroom, and spend your hard-earned cash incidentally to go towards this fundraising. That it might be value, there might be some value in it for the class that is actually doing the work. I'm not saying that these things are always either completely valuable or completely not valuable, but for your class, it's an interruption. They're forced to the other side of the school, etc., etc. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Other things that happen, perhaps another class is doing surveys in maths, so they come into your classroom and they ask the children, put your hand up if your favourite colour is red, and so that's how they get their numbers up for their survey. So that can also be an interruption to your day and a waste of time. Okay, the final thing, which I think is the biggest time waster in school, is what I'm going to call winding up and winding down. And that is something that happens at the beginning and the end of every term, and most especially in the autumn when the new school year begins, and in the summer when the school year ends. And what do I mean by winding up and winding down? Well, let me give you an example from my own life. I once worked under a head teacher who had, possibly still has, I don't think she is actually a head teacher anymore. I think she's doing other things, but she had an extremely good reputation. I think actually she got an excellent when the inspectors came. So very good reputation. I only worked for her for about 3 or 4 months, but what she said to me when I first started working there, that was my first 2 weeks, so that's 2 whole weeks, were to be spent primarily, here we've got cat number 2, so we've got 2 cats here. But those 2 weeks were to be spent primarily getting to know the children. Now, obviously, that is not a waste of time in a sense. Of course, it's important for a class teacher to know the children in her class. That is an extremely important thing. But the point is, every single year in primary school, and I don't really know how that works in a secondary school, because you're never going to get to know the children in the class. A class teacher is never going to get to know the children in the class as well as a primary school teacher, just for the simple reason that they don't see them enough. So it's going to operate differently in a secondary school. On top of that, in a secondary school, there's a sense in which the children don't need to know their teacher quite as well as they do in a primary school. But nevertheless, every year for 2 weeks, the primary goal is getting to know the class. So that's 2 weeks of teaching time that is somewhat sacrificed. It's not that there's no teaching going on, but it's not at full steam. And of course, at the end of the year, there's a winding down period. Everybody's tired. The children are fed up. They know the summer is coming, especially the older children. The teachers are fed up, but also the teachers have got a lot of preparation to do for the next year. Often in schools, teachers are given a checklist of things that need to be done in the last 2 weeks of term. And what is sacrificed? Teaching time is sacrificed. There's no other way to do it. Yes, teachers do stay on and they do things after school and during their lunch times and before school, but nevertheless there are some things that have to be done for one reason or another. Perhaps they involve another member of staff, so they have to be done during the school day. On top of that, there are always, towards the end of the summer term, lots of other things going on in the school which will take up teaching time. This happens in other terms too. Obviously, it's going to happen in the run up to Christmas, because Christmas is a time of year that children get very excited about, and there are lots of things, again, going on in the school that the children want to be involved in. And there's a sense in which, no, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good for children to have different kinds of activities, but ultimately it eats into learning time. So the point I'm making overall is that in school there's a lot of dead time. There's a lot of killing time. And if you were to educate your children at home, you would have control over the time. You probably learnt during lockdowns that a lot of school time, or a lot of time, is not actually needed for the core subjects. If you were given work to do for your child during lockdown, you would probably find that you could complete it fairly quickly. It wouldn't take your full day, put it that way. And that goes to show that the tasks that the teachers want the children to do can be completed very quickly, and yet the children are in school all day. So, teaching your children at home, having your children at home, means that you can control the time. You can decide how much time you want to give to a particular subject. You can decide when it's time to stop and move on to something else. You can decide when it's time to go out and play, when it's time to go to the park, to go swimming, to go to the art gallery, whatever it is you want to do, you can make that decision. And there isn't 10 minutes wasted while you're waiting for the slow coach to tie their laces. That just doesn't happen when you're at home, because all you have to consider is your own child or your own children. And as I've mentioned before, in terms of things like timekeeping, they probably operate on much the same standard as you do, because they're your children. So, if you like this, please like the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and please visit the website. And if there's any topics that you're interested in that you'd like me to cover, please put that in the comments below, and I'll be very happy to cover it for you. Okay, thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye.